This one says, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ola Joy from Ado Ekiti in Ekiti State, Nigeria. I'm into poultry business, sales of frozen chicken. How do I retain my customers from other competitors who go about dropping the prices of their production for them to sell desperately? This is an interesting question. I even had a conversation about this during the week while I had a private strategy session with one of the members of the BMG. So something catastrophic is happening in the frozen foods business, particularly frozen chicken, in markets like Nigeria. I'm not sure how it happens in other countries within West Africa and outside of West Africa, right? But what you see happening right now is that poultry farmers, those who produce birds and slaughter the birds and then freeze the meat to sell, are now facing stiff competition because the cost of growing poultry has skyrocketed. So, as you can imagine, the cost of the ingredients that they use for poultry feed, corn, blood meal, fish meal, all these items have become more and more expensive. So the cost of raising chickens has gone through the roof. Now, you flip that, what you find, even though before now, imported chicken used to be banned, but they are now everywhere in the market. So local poultry farmers in Nigeria and across West Africa are now competing against chicken that is coming all the way from Brazil and China and all these other countries. And the problem is many of our local producers cannot compete with these imported products, because in those countries where these things are produced, they are produced at scale. So those producers, the foreign producers, have benefits of economies of scale. In some of these countries where the chicken is coming from, the frozen chicken is coming from, the product is subsidized by the government. The producers gain from a lot of benefits that support their business, compared to Africa, where essentially the business owner is on his own or her own. So what we're seeing now is that poultry producers are facing very stiff competition, not just from other local producers, but particularly from imported products. That's the first problem. The second problem is that consumers now treat chicken like a commodity, and truly that's what it is. People want to buy frozen chicken. They don't care whether it is imported or local. They just want to buy frozen chicken at the cheapest price possible. And that creates a problem. So when the customer doesn't care that you are a local producer and that your cost of production is higher compared to the foreign producer, the customer doesn't care. The customer just wants chicken. Whether it is imported or local, they don't care. They are going to buy the cheaper price. So the challenge here is that all your appeals that, my chicken, when your customer says, but your chicken is expensive, when you try to explain that, I'm a local producer, my chickens are produced locally, cost of feed is higher, cost of production is higher, cost of diesel and all those things are higher, consumers don't care, because consumers too are hurting in their pockets. Purchasing power has been severely battered. So people are pinching their pennies to maximize their budgets. So while you are crying that the cost of production is high for you, the person you are crying to doesn't care, because the person too is crying internally. They have a limited budget and they want to buy what they want to buy. So what you now have is a situation where you have very limited competitive advantage if you are selling frozen chicken right now, because you are competing against imported products that are landing in your country, whether it's Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, or Ghana. They are landing in your country at a cheaper cost. And the people who will buy don't care whether it is local or foreign. They just want chicken at the lowest possible price. So what can you do when you are in a crowded or competitive market like this? A couple of things that you can do would be that you can no longer compete on the product itself, because consumers see all chicken as chicken. Of course, there are differences, like the fatty ones. The one in Nigeria, they call them orobo locally, the fatty ones. Then there are the ones that have leaner meats, the one they will tell you soft chicken, there's local chicken and all that, right? But generally, particularly in a tough economy, people just want to maximize their budgets, right? So one way you can compete when the market is very crowded and competitive like this, like I said, you can no longer compete on the product. The days of my chicken is local and the other one is imported, those days essentially look like they are gone. I remember there was a time when there was a preference for local chicken because people were a bit scared of the antibiotics and all these other scary stories about imported chicken, particularly when there was a ban on imported chicken and most of the imported chicken had to be smuggled. So there were all these stories about the kind of terrible things that used to happen to foreign imported chicken, that to smuggle it, they used to do all sorts of things to the chicken. Some of them used to pour dangerous substances, sometimes like formalin and things. So there used to be all those scary stories. So at that time, people had a preference for local chicken because they saw local chicken as safer, right? But since the economic difficulties started, particularly for poultry producers, and the imports look like they've been relaxed by the governments, chicken can now come in from Brazil, from China, from all those other areas. All of a sudden, local producers are now taking a beating. So, like I said, you can no longer compete on the product. If you are selling a kilo of chicken for 5,000 naira in Nigeria, if somebody is selling for 5,000 and you are selling for 6,000, your customers, for those ones who will care to ask you, because automatically they'll go to the cheaper one. In their mind, chicken is chicken, right? For those ones who care to ask you, why is your chicken more expensive? Telling them that your chicken was locally produced all of a sudden doesn't mean anything anymore. It doesn't mean anything anymore. People just want chicken at the lowest possible price. So, like I said, you can no longer compete on the products, but you can compete on something else, which is why you're on this clinic. My job is not to tell you the problems. My job is to tell you, give you the answers and tell you the solution. So one way you can get out of this competition is to differentiate yourself in terms of service. And by service, I mean convenience. If two businesses are selling the same product at the same price, I'm more likely to buy from the person who is more convenient for me to buy. What does convenience mean? Location is one way to be more convenient. If you are closer to me, so let's take this example. If most people who sell frozen chicken are in the market, right? But you are closer to me because your cold room is in my estate, right? Why do I need to go to the market, particularly now that transportation, the cost of fuel and all that? Why do I need to go to the market to buy chicken when I can just buy from you? You are in my neighborhood. I don't need to go to the market, right? So even though your chicken may be more expensive, in my mind, I would factor in, by the time I burn fuel or take transport, plus the hassle, plus getting under the hot sun and the whole mess of the market, do I really want to do that? I will likely pay more for your chicken. So one way to stand out is if you can be more convenient by means of location. If you are closer to the customer, that is one way you can more or less stand out if you are more convenient. The second way you can avoid this messiness in the kind of competition that has besieged frozen foods is to target customers who are not price sensitive. So, like I always say, all your customers are not the same. All consumers are not the same. Not everybody buys because of price. Not everybody is looking for cheapest price. Not everybody is looking for cheapest price. There are some people who you may be cheap, but because of the way your environment is, maybe like it's dirty or something, they won't buy from you. Some people you may be cheap, you might be you might sell the lowest, but if your service is poor, I mean like customer service, they will not buy from you. They'll be like, after all, I'm coming to spend my money in your establishment. I deserve to be treated better, right? So you can stand out in terms of service. And by service, I'm being very specific in terms of convenience. If you make it easier to buy from you, even if your price is higher, people will like some consumers will buy from you rather than buying from the person who is cheapest. Remember, even when you are cheap, there are trade-offs. When you are cheap, for example, I give this instance with petrol. Right now in Nigeria, the cheapest petrol can be sold at NNPC, are sold at NNPC filling stations. It's a government-owned company that sells petrol. But even though they are the cheapest, you might think that everybody would only buy their fuel from NNPC filling stations. Sometimes the difference in price, NNPC can be up to 100 naira cheaper. Still, you don't see people, forcing themselves to buy from the NNPC. Some people will only buy from filling stations that are close to where they live or where they work. It's more convenient. Why would I burn fuel to go all the way to buy from an NNPC filling station when there's just a filling station close to me here? I can buy from the one that is closest. Some factor in the presentation of the NNPC filling stations, particularly their staff, the ones who dispense, or even their meters. They might say, okay, I'm not even sure these meters are properly calibrated. So it's not always only about price. There are other things you can do, particularly around service. Like I just said, if it is more convenient to buy from you, people will buy from you, even though you are slightly more expensive than your competition. So one practical solution I will give you is find a way to penetrate capture captive market. By a captive market, an example of a captive market is a residential estate. In a residential estate, people who live there are more, it will be more convenient for them to buy from you than to go out of their estate and buy from, maybe go all the way to a market, go all the way to a mall, go all the way to that distant supermarket. People will likely buy from people who are closer to them. So if you can find a way to penetrate captive markets like residential estates, like commercial areas, whether it's shopping complexes, business areas, if you have like a supermarket that a lot of people come to, this is another idea I want to give to you. The potential for a strategic partnership, right? People who buy from supermarkets are not always price conscious. Because if you are price conscious, you won't go to a supermarket. Supermarkets have overheads. The AC is not free. That's why the products are more expensive. People who are bargain conscious will go to a market and open air market and buy. So people who come to supermarkets are not just buying because of price. They can be buying for a couple of other reasons. It can be convenience, it can be quality, it can be customer service, it can be something. So if you sell chicken and you're looking for ways to stand out from the price competition, look for a supermarket that either doesn't sell frozen foods, or even if they sell frozen foods, they sell the branded ones, like the ones from Chi and Zatek and all of them, right? And one thing you can do is you can more or less situate yourself close to that supermarket so that when people buy their groceries and they come out, they can then buy from, whether you sell frozen chicken, frozen fish, and other things. Those are options that are available to you. So I think by locating yourself in a strategic place, bringing yourself closer to the kind of customers who are not particularly price sensitive, you may be able to break away from this competition that is trying to squeeze you. So the lesson here is this: when the competition is about price, it's very likely you are competing against people who are willing to do almost anything, right, to get customers. And that's what is reflected in your question, right? People who are willing to do just about anything to get customers. Do you want to be in that kind of business? So like I just said, not everybody buys because of low price. Not everybody buys something because it's cheap, right? I've given you instances. I've given petrol, very practical example. If it was about cheap price, everybody would be buying from NNPC filling stations. Apart from the fact that they don't always have the product available. Even when they have the product available, you will see the long queues and the crowd. It's difficult to buy from them because everybody wants to buy from them because they're cheap. So that creates an advantage for you. You should be the option for customers who don't like stress, customers who want convenience. They would rather buy from somebody who is closer than going all the way. So I think if you play with location, play with strategic location, situating yourself in strategic places. I've given you examples. Residential estates, that's a captive market. There are some consumers that would rather buy inside their estate than go all the way. Because if I'm buying in the estate, I just come out of my house, walk down to your shop and buy. Why? But if I'm going to the market, I have to actually prepare. I have to prepare because I'm leaving the estate. So that's one type of strategic location. The second is a supermarket. Customers who come to a supermarket are not particularly price sensitive. They are insensitive to pricing as long as it is within reason. You can position yourself close to those kinds of places so that you can get the kind of customers that patronize them. So like I said, even if they have freezers inside where they sell already packaged chicken, you are selling by the kilo, and there are people that will want to buy from you just because you are close enough to a supermarket that they buy from. So I hope this advice has been practical enough.